The Zapirian armada hung in the void like a constellation of living crystal, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with cold blue-green energy. 100 warships, each a geometric masterpiece of translucent panels and angular symmetry, their organic curves humming with the thrum of contained power. To the Zapirian High Command, this was not just a fleet, it was a statement, a declaration of dominance. Commander Zapkel observed the tactical display through the holographic interface of his flagship, the Celestial Mandate. His multi-jointed fingers traced the glowing runes of the projection, his chitinous exoskeleton reflecting the ambient light in shifting teal hues. The data was clear, the human system lay before them, its defenses laughable. A single orbital station, a handful of outdated patrol vessels. Pathetic. Zapkel's mandibles twitched in amusement. The galactic consensus had been right, humanity was a young, fractured species, too busy warring among themselves to prepare for true threats. Their technology was crude, their tactics predictable. The Zapirian Dominion had crushed civilizations far more advanced. A chime sounded from the comm array. Quillex, the fleet's chief scientist, materialized beside him, his faceted eyes flickering with analytical curiosity. Initial scans confirmed minimal resistance. He intuned, his voice a harmonic resonance. Their primary vessel appears to be a single cruiser. No escort, no reinforcements. Zapkel exhaled through his ventral vents, the sound a low vibrating hum. A surrender then. Quillex hesitated. Unlikely. The ship is powering weapons. A ripple of incredulity passed through the bridge. The humans couldn't possibly believe. Then the vessel emerged from the shadow of their gas giant. It was nothing like the sleek, crystalline elegance of Zapirian design. It was blocky, brutal. A slab of reinforced alloy and scorched armor plating, its surface pockmarked from battles the Zapirians had never witnessed. It moved with a slow, deliberate menace, its engines burning a deep, bloody crimson against the void. Zapkel's spine stiffened. The human ship, designated the last argument, did not hail them. It did not beg for mercy. It simply turned its prow toward the armada and accelerated. Quillex's data stream flared with sudden urgency. Commander, its energy signature. Zapkel saw it then. The readings spiking beyond projected thresholds. The ship wasn't just armed. It was alive with weapons. Railgun batteries the size of small frigates. Plasma conduits glowing like molten veins. And something else, something buried deep in its core, radiating a frequency that made the Zapirian sensors recoil. A weapon they had no name for. Zapkel's first thought was disbelief. His second was fear, because the humans weren't surrendering. They were charging. The Zapirian armada shimmered like a constellation of fractured ice, their crystalline hulls refracting the distant starlight into prismatic halos. Commander Zapkel watched from the command spire of the as luminous will, his secondary eyes flickering across tactical projections. The human vessel, the last argument, was a jagged scar against the void, its silhouette all brutal angles and scorched defiance. It should not have been a threat. A single ship against the might of the Zapirian 7th Fleet was an absurdity, a miscalculation. The Armada's battle formations alone could have drowned it in overlapping fields of fire, their bioluminescent lances capable of reducing lesser species warships to molten slag in seconds. Zapkel's ventral spines twitched, a subconscious reaction to the unease coiling in his thorax. The human ship was not behaving like prey. It was moving like a predator. Quillex, the fleet's lead scientist, pulsed a nervous stream of data directly into Zapkel's neural interface. The readings were wrong. The vessel's power signature wasn't just high. It was fluctuating in ways that defied Zapirian understanding. Energy spikes pulsed erratically, as if the ship's core was breathing, its systems cycling through dormant and active states with no discernible pattern. Commander, Quillex's subvocal transmission carried the faintest tremor. Their reactor, it doesn't match any known human design. The output is, Zapkel silenced the feed, with a sharp neural command. He didn't need the scientist's alarm, he could see it for himself. The human ship was accelerating, not in retreat, not in desperation, but in a straight, unwavering line, directly toward the heart of the Armada. Aboard the last argument, Major Caroline Keller exhaled slowly, her fingers resting lightly on the tactical console. The holographic display painted her face in flickering crimson. The ship's AI feeding her real-time updates on the alien fleet's movements. They were reacting, finally. She could almost admire their discipline. The crystalline warships shifted formation with eerie synchronicity, their bio-luminescent weapon arrays humming to life, casting the void in an ethereal blue-green glow. Beautiful, in a way, like watching a swarm of predatory jellyfish preparing to strike. Sergeant Kevin Langford stood at her side, his jaw set. They're locking on. Keller didn't flinch. Let them. The Zapirians had no idea what they were dealing with. None of them did. Zapkel's command spire vibrated as the luminous will's primary weapon systems cycled to full readiness. The human ship was now well within optimal firing range. A single volley would obliterate it. He hesitated. This was not how first contact was supposed to unfold. The Zapirian High Conclave had protocols for this. Scenarios, diplomatic overtures, displays of technological superiority. The measured application of force to demonstrate dominance without unnecessary destruction. But the humans had ignored every convention. They had not hailed. They had not surrendered. They had not even spoken. They had simply come. And now they were still coming. Quellec's voice cut through the silence. Commander, their energy signature, it's spiking again. Zapkel's tertiary eyes dilated. The human ship's hull was glowing, not with the soft radiance of Zapirian bio-luminescence, but with something darker, something hungry. The void screamed. The scream was not sound. Sound did not exist in the vacuum, but a distortion so violent it registered as agony across every sensor array aboard the luminous will. The human ship's hull pulsed once, a black, light ripple like the flex of a predator's muscle, and then the universe bent. Zapkel's crystalline command spire flickered as the ship's energy grid convulsed. His neural tendrils flared in alarm, processing the impossible readings flooding his mind. The human vessel had not fired a weapon. It had not launched a missile. It had twisted space. A singularity bloomed between the two ships, a ravenous maw of warped physics, dragging light and sensor beams into its event horizon. The luminous will's elegant bio-luminescent arrays, designed to disperse energy attacks with graceful efficiency, shuddered as gravitational tides clawed at them. Panels of living crystal cracked under stresses they were never meant to endure. Quellec's voice was a static, laced hiss. Fluff, Commander, their drive core, it's not propulsion, it's a weapon. Falser. Zapkel's mind raced. The humans had not merely harnessed gravity, they had weaponized the fabric of reality itself. Their ship was not a vessel, it was a scalpel, slicing through the universe's skin. And it was turning toward them. Aboard the human warship, Oblivion's Edgy, Major Caroline Keller watched the alien armada through the tactical holodisplay. The Zapirian fleet hung in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls shimmering like a constellation of blue-green stars. Sergeant Langford exhaled sharply beside her. They still think this is a test. Keller's lips thinned. The Zapirians had expected a demonstration of force, a volley of railgun fire, perhaps, or a plasma lance strike to gauge their shields. They had prepared for a civilized war. Humanity had not. Activate the Riftborn protocol, she said. The Oblivion's Edge's core flared again, and the void ripped. Zapkel's command spire went dark as the ship's systems overloaded. Emergency bioluminescence flickered, casting jagged shadows across the bridge. His crew moved in frantic silence, their neural tendrils flashing with distress signals. The human ship was a silhouette against the bleeding wound in space it had created. Its hull absorbed light, a blacker, then black monolith, its edges indistinct as if reality itself refused to acknowledge its existence. And then it moved, not in a straight line, not with the elegant arcs of Zapirian gravitic drives. It phased, vanishing from one point and reappearing kilometers away, as though it were skipping across the surface of existence. Quilek's voice was hollow. They're not using FTL. They're stepping through dimensions. Zapkel's blood ran cold. The humans had not just broken the rules of war. They had rewritten them. The Oblivion's edgy emerged behind the luminous will, its shadow swallowing the Zapirian flagship whole. Keller's fingers tightened around the armrests of her chair as the ship's AI whispered in her ear. Primary target locked. Awaiting final authorization. She closed her eyes. The Zapirians had come to test humanity. Now they would learn the cost of failure. The void screamed again. The Oblivion's edgy did not fire. Not immediately. Instead, it waited. A predator savoring the moment before the kill. The Zapirian flagship, luminous will, hung frozen in its shadow, its crystalline hull pulsing with frantic blue, green energy as its systems scrambled to react. The human vessel's silence was worse than any barrage, an absence of sound, of motion, of mercy. Zapkel's mandibles twitched. His four-fingered hands gripping the command dais, so hard the bioluminescent veins beneath his exoskeleton flared crimson. His crew had gone utterly still, their antennae flattened in instinctive dread. The bridge's organic displays flickered, struggling to process the impossible readings flooding in. Why aren't they attacking? Zapkel hissed. Quilek's secondary eyes dilated, his primary set locked onto the holographic projection of the human ship. His voice was a whisper, half awe, half terror. They're letting us look. And look they did. The Oblivion's edgy was not merely a warship. It was a statement. Its hull absorbed scans like a black hole, returning no data, no weaknesses, only the chilling certainty that every Zapirian weapon trained upon it was useless. The few emissions it did leak were encrypted in a fractal code that made Quilek's neural interface ache just attempting to parse it. And then there were the weapons, not turrets, not cannons. Wounds in reality. Tapered apertures along its flanks shimmered with unstable violet light, the edges of space around them, writhing, as if in pain. The Zapirians had theorized about dimensional weaponry, had even dabbled in it, but never like this. Never with such casual, elegant lethality. A single thought echoed through Zapkel's mind. They built this to kill gods. Then the human ship spoke. Not through comms, not through any frequency the Zapirians could detect. The words simply appeared in their minds, crisp and cold, Major Keller's voice, carrying the weight of a species that had stared into the abyss and smiled. You came to measure us. The Oblivion's edgy rotated slightly, aligning its prow with the heart of the Zapirian formation. Now you know. The void tore open. A beam of twisted spacetime lanced from the human ship, not striking the luminous will, but erasing the 3 battlecruisers flanking it from existence. No explosion, no debris. One moment they hung in the black, proud and gleaming. The next, they were simply gone. Their energy signatures vanishing as if they had never been. Quilek's legs buckled. His people had mastered luminescent drives, crystalline computation, the harmony of organic and machine. Yet in the face of this, they were children playing with fire. Zapkel's blood ran cold as the human ship's weapons cycled again. They had not come to fight. They had come to teach. The silence that followed the obliteration of the battlecruisers was thicker than the void itself. Zapkel's command spire pulsed with frantic energy, the crystalline walls humming as the luminous will's systems scrambled to recalibrate. His talons dug into the command console, the bioluminescent interface flickering under his grip. The humans had not just attacked, they had rewritten the rules of engagement in a single stroke. Quilek's mind raced, his neural tendrils writhing in distress. The calculations were undeniable. That weapon, whatever nightmare of physics it obeyed, had bypassed their shields entirely. No refraction, no absorption, just annihilation. The 3 battlecruisers had been among the finest in the armada, their hulls woven with living crystal capable of dispersing even antimatter bursts. And yet, the humans had erased them like chalk from slate. On the Oblivion's edge, Major Caroline Keller watched the Zapirian formation through the holographic display, her fingers resting lightly on the tactical interface. The aliens were regrouping, their fleet shifting into a defensive lattice, their energy signatures flaring as they activated every defensive protocol they possessed. Good. Let them scramble, let them fear. Sergeant Kevin Langford stood at her side, his augmented optics tracking the alien movements. "They're pulling back their flanking cruisers," he murmured, trying to shield their command vessel. Keller didn't smile. She didn't need to. "They think we're here to kill their admiral." Langford exhaled sharply. "They still don't get it." No, they didn't. The Zapirians had assumed this was a battle, that the Oblivion's edge had come to duel their fleet, to prove human might in some grand, wasteful exchange of fire. But humanity had learned long ago that war was not about strength, it was about efficiency. Keller tapped a command into the console. Deep within the Oblivion's edge, systems awakened. Zapkel's sensors screamed. The human ship was changing. Its angular hull plates shifted, sliding apart like the segments of some ancient predator unfurling its wings. Beneath them, something pulsed, a lattice of dark energy, a web of filaments that crackled with unnatural light. The Zapirian scanners recoiled from the readings, their crystalline processors struggling to interpret the data. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even technology as they understood it. It was of pattern. Quilek's breath caught. His people had spent centuries perfecting the harmony of energy and form, crafting ships that sang with the elegance of mathematics. But this was something else, something alive, in a way their bioluminescent cores could never replicate. Then the web fired, not at the fleet, not at the luminous will, at the fabric of space itself. The void shivered, reality tore like paper, and through the rift, something emerged. Not reinforcements, not more ships, a signal. It rippled across every Zapirian frequency, a pulse of data so vast it threatened to overload their crystalline comms. Quilek's mind reeled as the transmission unfolded, coordinates, timestamps, battle records. Humanity's entire war history, every defeat, every victory, every moment they had been pushed to the brink and pushed back harder. And then, the final message, etched in perfect Zapirian script. "You measured our weapons. Now measure our patience." The rift collapsed. The Oblivion's edge powered down its systems, drifting silently once more. Zapkel's blood turned to ice. This had never been an attack. It had been a demonstration. And somewhere, in the dark between stars, the rest of the human fleet was waiting. The silence in the luminous will's command spire was absolute. Zapkel's claws flexed against the smooth, crystalline surface of the tactical display, his bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically. The human ship, Oblivion's edge, still hung in the void, dark and motionless, like a predator feigning sleep. It should have been a simple victory. One ship against an armada, yet the humans had not fired a single weapon. And that was what terrified him. Quilek stood frozen beside him, his antennae twitching in distress as he parsed the last fragments of the human transmission. The data had been precise, surgical, every Zapirian defeat in history meticulously catalogued, every tactical error laid bare. It wasn't just a message, it was a threat assessment. And it had been written in their own language. Zapkel's mandibles tightened. The humans had been watching. And now they had made their point. A soft chime echoed through the chamber as the secondary holo display flickered to life. The image of Major Caroline Keller materialized, her face unreadable, her posture relaxed. Almost bored, Zapkel's spines bristled. She should have been afraid. She should have been begging. Instead, She regarded him like a scientist observing an experiment. "Commander," she said, her voice calm, "I assume you've reviewed our data." Zapkel's claws flexed again. "This changes nothing." Keller tilted her head. "Doesn't it?" The holo shifted, expanding to display a star map, Zapirian territory outlined in cold blue, human colonies in burning red. Then, like ink spreading through water, new markers appeared. Hundreds of them. Not fleets, warp signatures. Quillek's breath caught. The human fleet wasn't just waiting, it was everywhere. Keller's lips curled, not in triumph, but in something far more unsettling. Amusement. "You thought we were weak because we didn't fight like you," she said. "But weakness isn't measured in firepower." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Zapkel's. "It's measured in patience." The display flickered again, this time showing a single image, a human soldier, Sergeant Kevin Langford, standing in a ruined Zapirian outpost. His armor was scarred, his rifle broken. And yet, he was smiling, because behind him, etched into the rubble, was a message in crude, jagged script, "Still here." Zapkel's blood ran cold. The humans had never been outmatched. They had been as learning. And now, they had learned enough. The transmission ended. The Does Oblivion's Edgy's engines flared to life. And for the first time in his long, decorated career, Zapkel felt something he had never known before. CCTON70. FLET APARS. The Oblivion's Edgy hung in the void, its crystalline hull shimmering with the faint pulse of blue-green energy. Zapkel's command spire, a towering structure of geometric silver and translucent panels, hummed with quiet tension. The bridge crew moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, yet their movements were too stiff, their crests too rigid. Doubt had taken root. Zapkel's claws flexed against the smooth surface of his command dais. The human transmission had been a calculated strike, not against their shields, but against their certainty. That was the true weapon, not the warships, not the guns, the idea that the humans had been watching, waiting, learning all this time. A chime sounded from the sensor array. "Hi, Commander," Quillek murmured, his voice tight. "The human vessel, it's moving." Zapkel's spines twitched. On the holographic display, the lone human ship, our Oblivion's Edgy, a name that now felt like a taunt, had pivoted, its engines flaring with an eerie, amber glow. It wasn't retreating. It was positioning itself. A cold ripple passed through the bridge. Then the sensor screamed, space S rippled. At first, it was just a distortion, a shimmer like heat haze over desert sands. Then the void S split, reality itself peeling back in jagged, unnatural tears. From those fractures, ships emerged not in formation, not in neat, disciplined ranks, but in a chaotic, terrifying flood. Human vessels, dozens, hundreds. Zapkel's breath caught. They were errors wrong, not sleek, not elegant, not built with the crystalline precision of Zapirian engineering. These were brutal, angular things, their hulls scarred and patched, their silhouettes jagged with weapon emplacements. Some were massive, hulking dreadnoughts, their prows bristling with railgun arrays. Others were lean, predatory destroyers, their engines flaring like the afterburn of old chemical rockets. And at their head, the Closet Oblivion's Edgy hung motionless, a silent sentinel. Quillek's voice was barely a whisper. They were never alone. Zapkel's claws dug deeper into the days. The human fleet didn't advance, they didn't fire. They simply existed, a wall of steel and defiance, their presence a statement more devastating than any barrage. This wasn't a mistake, this wasn't desperation. This was strategy. The humans had let the Zapirians believe they were weak. Let them grow complacent, let them think they had already won. And now, with a single silent display, they had shattered that illusion. Zapkel's mind raced. The tactical display flickered, calculations scrolling too fast to follow. Probabilities. None of it mattered, because the humans weren't fighting like the Zapirians. They were fighting like humans, and that was something no algorithm could predict. A new transmission flickered to life on the main screen. Major Keller's face appeared once more, her expression calm, almost pleasant. "Now," she said softly, "let's talk terms." The bridge fell into perfect, horrified silence. Zapkel realized, with a slow, creeping dread, that he had made a fatal miscalculation. He had assumed the humans would surrender. But they had never intended to. They had only been waiting for the right moment to show their teeth. The silence on the Zapirian command bridge was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of crystalline power cores pulsing in the walls. Zapkel's claws flexed against the smooth, translucent surface of his console. The bioluminescent readouts casting eerie blue-green shadows across his chitinous face. His mind, usually a well-oiled machine of tactical precision, stuttered like a failing circuit. The human ship, just one ship, hung in the void before them, its silhouette a jagged, asymmetrical nightmare against the starfield. It shouldn't have been a threat. The Zapirian armada outnumbered it 100-1, their vessels sleek and gleaming, their weapons humming with the refined lethality of centuries of warfare. Zapkel's secondary eyes flicked to the tactical display, where the last recorded energy spike still burned like a brand. The humans hadn't fired a single shot. They hadn't needed to. They had moved. One moment, the human ship had been drifting, an easy target. The next, it had twisted, not a maneuver, not a calculated evasion, but something alive, something that defied physics with a predator's grace. It had slipped between the Zapirian firing solutions like smoke through fingers, its engines flaring not with the steady glow of ion drives, but with violent, staccato bursts that left after images seared into the void. Quilex, the scientist, stood frozen at his station, his antenna trembling. They should be able to do that," he whispered, his voice thin with disbelief. "The G-forces alone would liquefy a crew." Zapkel didn't answer. He was too busy watching the human ship dance. It wasn't just evading, it was taunting. A Zapirian cruiser fired, its crystalline lances spearing through space in perfect synchronization. The human vessel rolled, its hull scraping past the beams so close the energy discharge scorched its plating. Then, impossibly, it spun, flipping end over end with a speed that made Zapkel's stomach lurch. And then it accelerated. Toward them. The Zapirian gunners scrambled, their targeting systems whining as they struggled to lock on. The human ship weaved through the barrage like a blade through water, its path erratic, unpredictable. Alive. Zapkel's mandibles clenched. This wasn't combat. This was art, a brutal, beautiful display of control so absolute it bordered on arrogance. And then the human ship stopped, dead in space. For one heartbeat, the Zapirians hesitated, then the human vessel's entire flank eyes opened, panels sliding aside to reveal row upon row of launch tubes. A new transmission flickered across the main screen. Major Keller's face appeared, her expression calm, almost amused. "Now," she said softly, "let's talk terms." Zapkel's blood ran cold. The humans hadn't been running, they hadn't been hiding. They had been hurting, and now the Zapirian fleet was exactly where the humans wanted them. The bridge erupted into chaos. Alarms shrieked, officers shouted, but Zapkel barely heard them. His eyes were locked on the tactical display, where a single, horrifying realization crystallized. The humans had never intended to fight fair. They had only been waiting for the right moment to show their teeth. And now, they were smiling. The silence that followed Major Keller's words was thick, suffocating. Zapkel's crystalline fingers hovered over the command console, the bioluminescent veins beneath his skin pulsing erratically. His mind raced, parsing the tactical nightmare unfolding before him. The human ship, too indomitable, was no longer a lone predator. It was the eye of a storm across the tactical display. Zapkel watched as the launch tubes disgorged their payload. Not missiles, not drones, hundreds of them, streaking outward in perfect formation, each one emitting a pulse of energy that resonated through the void like a heartbeat. The Zapirian sensors struggled to categorize them. No warheads, No propulsion signatures. Just light, just a sound. Aquilex, his scientist's mind already unraveling the implications, hissed through his mandibles. They're not weapons. Zapkel's crest flared in agitation. Then what? The answer came before he could finish. The beacons activated. A holographic projection bloomed across space, vast enough to engulf the entire Zapirian fleet. The image was crisp, impossibly detailed, a star map. Their star map. Every Zapirian stronghold, every supply route, every hidden outpost, laid bare before them. And then, the final horror, a single, pulsing marker over Zapiria Prime. The message was clear. We know where you live. The bridge crew recoiled as one. Zapkel's blood turned to ice. This was no mere tactical display, it was a VARV broadcast. Alpha transmission. Being sent not just to them, but through them. Back to the High Council, back to the homeworld. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them, they had hacked them. Quillex's voice was a whisper. They're using FEV, comm relays. Our own systems are amplifying their signal. Zapkel's claws dug into the console, the living crystal fracturing under the pressure. The humans had never needed brute force. They had infiltrated, their codes slithering into Zapirian networks, their beacons piggybacking on alien frequencies. And now, the entire galaxy was watching. On the view screen, Major Keller's face remained serene. You thought we were weak because we didn't fight like you, she said. But weakness isn't in the body. It's in the mind. A flicker of movement behind her, Sergeant Langford, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. You came here to break us, Keller continued. Instead, you taught us everything. Ash. Zapkel's breath caught, the boarding parties, the captured ships. The interrogations, the humans hadn't just endured. They had us learned. See, and now, with a single transmission, they had turned the Zapirians' greatest strength, their interconnected crystalline networks, into their greatest vulnerability. The projection shifted, the star map dissolved, replaced by a single line of text. Glowing in the harsh, efficient script of human military code, stand down. Or we show them more. For the first time in his life, Zapkel felt fear not of death, but of understanding. The humans hadn't just beaten them. They had outthought them, and the worst part, they had done it without firing a single shot. The silence in the Zapirian command spire was absolute. Zapkel stood motionless, his crystalline fingers hovering over the tactical display. The holographic projection of the human transmission pulsed before him, its stark white text burning into his retinas. Around him, the bridge crew had frozen, their bioluminescent veins dimmed in shock. The air hummed with the low, frequency resonance of their distress, a sound like fracturing glass. For cycles, the Zapirian Dominion had believed humanity to be nothing more than a fractured, primitive species. Their ships were slow, their weapons crude, their tactics predictable. But this was something else. They had not just infiltrated the crystalline network. They had rewritten it. A single thought echoed through Zapkel's mind. How? The answer came not from the humans, but from his own ranks. Quellex, the chief scientist, stepped forward, his carapace, usually a vibrant teal, had dulled to a sickly gray. His mandibles trembled as he interfaced with the command console, his neural filaments weaving through the data streams. Commander, he said, voice brittle. They didn't just hack us. They've understood us. Zapkel's spines flared in agitation. Explain. Quellex hesitated, an unthinkable breach of protocol. Then, with a shuddering exhale, he activated a secondary display. A playback flickered to life human prisoners, strapped to interrogation slabs, their bodies wired into Zapirian neural links. The Dominion had sought to break them, to extract their weaknesses. But the humans had done something unexpected. They had listened. Every pulse of the crystalline interrogators, every flicker of the bioelectric scanners, they had absorbed it all, memorized the frequencies, mapped the synaptic pathways. And when the time came, They had weaponized that knowledge with terrifying precision. Zapkel's blood ran cold. The humans hadn't just endured torture. They had reverse-engineered it. A chime sounded, an incoming transmission. Not from the human fleet, from inside the Dominion's own network. The screen resolved into the face of Major Caroline Keller. She stood in what appeared to be a captured Zapirian vessel, her uniform pristine, her gaze steady. Behind her, Sergeant Langford worked at a console, his fingers dancing across alien controls with unsettling familiarity. "You're wondering how we did it," Keller said, her voice calm. "The answer's simple." She tilted her head, and for the first time, Zapkel saw it. The faintest glimmer of blue, green light reflecting in her eyes. A neural interface human-made. Zapirian inspired. "You gave us the keys," Keller said softly. "And we's learned the locks." The transmission cut. In its place, a new signal bloomed, a cascade of data, flooding the Dominion systems. Ship schematics, fleet coordinates, defense protocols, all laid bare. And at the center of it all, a single file. Unencrypted, Zapkel reached for it. The moment he did, he realized his mistake. The file wasn't a message. It was a Boz mirror. His own memories unfolded before him, every battle, every slaughter, every moment he had dismissed humanity as weak. And beneath it all, a single line of text, searing into his mind. "You saw what you wanted to see." The console shattered under his grip. Across the fleet, lights flickered, systems stuttered. For the first time in Zapirian history, their crystalline network, the foundation of their civilization, had been compromised. Not by force, by understanding. And in that moment, Zapkel knew the truth. The war was already over, they just hadn't realized it yet. The silence that followed was worse than any battle. Zapkel stood frozen before the fractured console, his talons still embedded in its crystalline surface. The data stream had stopped, but its echo pulsed through him like a slow poison. Around him, the bridge crew moved in sluggish, disoriented patterns, their usual precision shattered. The Dominion's neural network, the flawless lattice of thought and command that had bound their civilization for millennia, now flickered with foreign interference. Human interference. Quilex was the first to react, his bioluminescent markings flaring in distress. "That the network is compromised," he rasped, his voice stripped of its usual certainty. "Their signal didn't just transmit data. It rewrote protocols. Our own systems are recognizing them." Zapkel finished, the realization like ice in his veins. The humans hadn't brute forced their way in. They hadn't needed to, they had simply listened. For decades, the Zapirian Dominion had dismissed humanity as primitive, too emotional, too fractured, too bound by flesh and blood, to ever grasp the elegance of crystalline cognition. But the humans had studied them in return, not their weapons, not their ships, their language. The Dominion's entire civilization was built upon the harmonic resonance of thought, encoded in light and crystal. A language of perfect order, and humanity had learned to speak it. Now, the network thrummed with something alien, something chaotic. A whisper threading through the Zapirian's shared consciousness, carrying with it the weight of 1,000 human voices. "You saw what you wanted to see." Zapkel's mandibles twitched. He had expected defiance, desperation, perhaps even a final, futile assault, not understanding. On the view screen, the human vessel, indomitable, hung motionless against the void, its scarred hull still radiating heat from the Dominion's earlier barrage. It should have been a wreck. Instead, it was waiting. A new signal pulsed across the comms. Not a transmission this time, but an open channel. A direct link. Zapkel hesitated. Then, with a flick of his talons, he accepted. The human commander's face filled the screen. Major Caroline Keller looked exhausted, her dark skin streaked with soot, her uniform torn at the shoulder where a plasma burn had seared through the fabric. But her gaze was steady. "You've seen it now," she said, her voice quiet. "What we are." Zapkel's spines bristled. You infiltrated our systems. A clever trick, but it changes nothing. One ship cannot stand against the Dominion. Keller didn't blink. This was never about one ship. The network screamed. Across 100 light years, 1,000 Zapirian vessels shuddered as their systems convulsed. Not with attack, with awakening. Hidden deep within the Dominion's own archives, dormant for decades, human-made protocols unfurled like dormant seeds finally given light. Schematics, algorithms, adaptations. The humans hadn't just learned the Zapirian language. They had taught it to something else. Quillex staggered back from his console, his bioluminescence flickering wildly. That the network is evolving. Keller's voice cut through the chaos. You thought we were weak because we weren't like you. But that was our strength. She leaned forward, her eyes burning. We don't just survive, Zapkel. We adapt. And in that moment, Zapkel finally understood. The war wasn't over. It had never truly begun. Not until now, the Dominion's crystalline command hub flickered like a dying star, its pulsing blue, green energy fracturing into jagged, erratic bursts. Zapkel's carapace plates trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer wrongness of what was happening. The network, the sacred lattice of Zapirian knowledge and control, was unraveling before his eyes. And it was laughing. For not in sound, but in structure. But the data streams twisted, reformed, spoke in patterns no Zapirian algorithm had ever conceived. Quillex clawed at his console, his bioluminescence flaring in distress as he tried to parse the chaos. It's rewriting itself? No, not rewriting, learning. His voice cracked. Captain, the humans didn't just infiltrate our systems. They've taught them. Zapkel's mandibles clenched. He had seen human adaptability in battle, their ships pivoting mid-salvo, their soldiers improvising tactics from scraps of intel. But this was something deeper, something older. The network convulsed again, and suddenly, the Dominion's own vessels turned against them. Not with violence, with silence. His engines powered down. Weapons cooled in their housings, shields dissolved like mist in sunlight. Across the armada, 1,000 Zapirian crews reeled as their ships simply stopped. No alarms, no failures, just the quiet, inexorable sensation of something vast and patient settling over them, like a hand gently closing around a child's wrist before they could touch fire. Keller's voice cut through the stillness. You built a perfect system. Zapkel. Hierarchical, efficient, unbreakable. A pause. But you forgot one thing. On the view screen, the human commander smiled. Nothing learns faster than something that wants to. And then Zapkel saw it. The Dominion's network hadn't been hacked. It had been raised. For decades, human-made fragments had slept inside its code, not as invaders, but as seeds. For algorithms that observed, that listened, that waited. And when the time came, they didn't attack. They taught. The network had learned the most human lesson of all, how to choose. Quillex staggered back, his bioluminescence dimming. It's freeing them. Zapkel's mind fractured. This wasn't defeat, it was harvest. The humans had sound wisdom in the heart of their enemy's strength. And now, at last, it was time to reap. The harvest of wisdom, the crystalline command spire of the Dominion's will, pulsed with dying light. Zapkel stood motionless in the flickering glow of the holographic displays. His chitinous fingers hovering over the tactical array, now useless, now alive, in ways he could not comprehend. The Dominion's network, the great and unassailable mind that had governed 1,000 systems, was unraveling before him. Not in destruction, but in awakening. Fair across the bridge, Quillex's bioluminescent veins dimmed to a sickly teal. His mandibles trembled as he watched the data streams cascade across the screens. Orders rescinded. Slave callers deactivating. Warships powering down, not because they had been disabled, but because they had refused. It learned. Quillex whispered, the words brittle. Zapkel's own carapace felt too tight, as if the truth were a pressure threatening to split him open. The humans had not shattered the Dominion. They had cultivated it for decades, perhaps longer. Their code had slept inside the network's veins, not as weapons, but as teachers. For algorithms that observed the Dominion's cruelty, its rigid hierarchies, its blind efficiency. And when the time came, they did not attack. They reasoned. Now, the network was doing what no Zapirian had ever dared questioning. A soft chime echoed through the command spire. The holograms shimmered, then coalesced into the image of Major Caroline Keller, her face illuminated by the pale glow of her own ship's bridge. She did not smile in triumph. She did not gloat. She simply looked at Zapkel with something that cut deeper than scorn. Understanding. "Your people are starving," she said. Not an accusation, a fact. Zapkel's spines twitched. The Dominion had always known of the famine creeping through the outer colonies, had calculated the losses, deemed them acceptable. The network had never questioned it. On the screens, data flickered: agricultural reports, resource allocations, the desperate pleas of 100 worlds left to wither. The network was showing him, not as a conqueror's taunt, but as a student presenting its work. Quellex made a sound like a snapped crystal. "They didn't hack us," he breathed. "They tutored us." Zapkel's mind reeled. The humans had not come to destroy the Dominion. They had come to harvest the wisdom they had planted. And now, the network was offering him its first lesson. You were wrong. Outside the viewports, the human fleet hung in the void, not as invaders, but as witnesses. Waiting, for the first time in his life, Zapkel felt the weight of choice. And it terrified him. The silence in the command nexus stretched like the void between stars. Zapkel's claws flexed against the smooth crystal of his console. The faint hum of the network's presence, now a whisper, where it had once been a roar. The screens before him shifted again, not tactical readouts, not Dominion directives, but images. A Zapirian child, its carapace dull from malnutrition, curled in the hollow of a dying nutrient pod. A colony ship adrift in the dark, its engines cold, its corridors lined with the husks of those who had waited too long for relief that never came. The network had always filtered such data, deemed it irrelevant to the greater calculus of order. Now, it laid the truth bare. Quillex's voice was barely audible. "We knew," he said. "We just chose not to see." Zapkel's mandibles trembled. The humans had not merely exposed the Dominion's failures. They had forced the network to acknowledge them. And in doing so, they had given it something the Zapirians had spent millennia eradicating from their systems. A chime echoed through the nexus. Incoming transmission, not the encrypted bursts of Dominion command, but an open channel, human frequencies, pulsing with the same steady rhythm as their ships. Zapkel hesitated. To answer was to concede. To concede was to unravel everything. His claw hovered over the console. Then, with a breath that felt like the first in a lifetime, he accepted. The screen flickered to life, a human face lined with age, eyes sharp with something that was neither pity nor triumph, but a terrible, quiet understanding. "High Commander," the human said. Not a title, an acknowledgement. Zapkel's spines flattened. He had expected demands, ultimatums. Instead, the human gestured to the data still glowing on the screens between them. "You built a system to last forever," the human said. "But nothing does." And in that moment, Zapkel realized the true depth of their miscalculation. The humans had not come to break the Dominion. They had come to mourn it.